Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at my newest custom, which is another Gargoyles character. This is Thailog. He is Goliath's evil clone, and this has been in the works for a long time. It's one of the reasons I've been a little bit slower on producing customs than I normally am, simply because it has taken a ton of work to produce this guy. And so now we're going to talk about it. And if you like this kind of content, I do have a playlist for all of my previous custom figures, and I have basically playlists for just about everything I have on the channel, all kinds of reviews and gaming and everything else. So if you want to check that stuff out, there's plenty of stuff to check out there. So I encourage you to do that. It helps out the channel, and like I said, there's lots of content out there that you may be interested in. So anyway, let's go ahead and talk about how I built this. So everything you see here, except for the biceps, the last quarter of the tail, and the main part of the wings is original sculpt. I didn't make the wings, of course, because that'd just be crazy expensive to do. But I did have to actually modify them and connect them to the body, of course. And then the tail is also from the same figure that the wings came from, but I had to resculpt it all the way down to where it touches the surface. So that's mostly resculpted. And then I left the biceps alone because they didn't need to be changed. But everything else has either been resculpted or sculpted from scratch. So the base figure under there is the DC Universe Classics Apache Chief, because he's the perfect size. It's the same figure as Goliath, and obviously he's Goliath's clone, so he has to match. And then everything has been resculpted. I made some parts digitally, 3D modeling that I did during stream, and then I had those printed, and then I connected them to the figure, and then the rest I did by hand. So as far as the 3D modeling goes, that's the feet, the gauntlets, the hands, and the gun, and the head, and the shoulder pads. So most of the extension parts of the body. So the lower arms, lower legs, head, shoulder pads, and gun. All 3D modeling. Then, of course, I had to sculpt it to make it fit to the figure. So I had to resculpt the forearms underneath the gauntlets. I sculpted the legs and leg armor from scratch by hand. The chest armor is all sculpted from scratch by hand. The back, the chest, the neck, all of that. Basically, everything. These hanging bits down here are sculpted by hand. The armor plating on the hips sculpted by hand. The armor on the torso with like the red line work on there, again, all sculpted by hand. So this thing took a lot of work, a whole lot of work, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out, frankly. But the customer's happy too, and that's what's important. And then I had to do something. So because it's so big and heavy, this guy stands here. Let me just turn this off for a second. This guy stands about to the top of his head, about 21.5 centimeters, and that makes him about 8.5 inches tall. And he is solid because of all the sculpt work. We had to, of course, limit the articulation so that he could actually be sculpted accurately. The customer went for accuracy over articulation. So the only articulation that's really functional now, I made sure, even though I had to resculpt the shoulders and the chest, the shoulders are still almost completely functional. Bicep swivel's still there, and elbow hinge is still there. The head can't really move because the hair drapes down between the wings. Can't do anything about that. And then the hips, they technically can move, but due to the fact that the legs are not articulated anymore, we had to sacrifice that to make sure he wouldn't fall over and take a shelf dive. The legs are basically solid pieces with a swivel and a hinge still at the hip, standard DCUC articulation, but these plates are hard, so you can't really move the hips either. I know it's not hardly an action figure anymore, but customer gets what customer wants, and I'm okay with that because it still is technically an action figure. It lines up with the other Gargoyles I've made him, and we were able to retain some of it, so I'm okay with that. Oh, there's technically a waist swivel in there too. But everything, as far as the undercarriage, the base figure underneath everything, it's mostly there just to hold it all together. Like I said, aside from the biceps, the core body is all 100% new stuff. The neck, the pecs, everything is all resculpted. And so how I did it, and I'm not going to go into great detail because it would be here for forever, but if you are interested in that, I did go through the entire process, video by video on my Patreon page. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's where you would find that. But like I said, digital, traditional for the neck and everything. So lots of different steps involved. But I basically just sculpted the armor in place, and then I added the red on top, the extra strip of armor around there, so that the traditional sculpting would match the digital, and that worked out okay. I made like a skirt piece that was connected underneath the armor. So these were originally flexible pieces, then I sculpted on top of them. This one still is, just so that we could make sure the legs were perfectly flat when he was in his stance. But These guys back here too were originally flexible, and I sculpted on top of them to give them the right look. And the wings, of course, had to be connected to the body, so the entire back was resculpted with the wings connected. And I don't think I need to get into, well, I guess I can get into one more feature. But like I said, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, that's all on Patreon, and most people probably don't. So the last thing I did that was kind of a trick that I wanted to do to make sure the arms were more posable than not, since they were the only thing left, is instead of having these shoulder pads be solid pieces, even though they are technically hard, they are flexible. So they can move in if you need them to move in, they can move out, they can move up and down a little bit, and I did that in a very tricky way. And I don't want to get into it too much, but let me just tell you that they were connected with a soft material into the back, and then the back was sculpted over them, so they kind of just are connected very, I mean, they're like not going to fall off or anything, but they're just barely connected into the back, and they move around so that the arms can be posed at least a little bit, even though you can't move the head, so the arms can't really usefully be posed. I mean, you're not going to get them into a dynamic pose or anything, but that's how I did it. You can kind of see a little bit of the material in there that's connecting the shoulder pad to the body so that it can flex around. And frankly, I am amazed that it worked out. I mean, I had the idea, it came to fruition, but I thought for sure it was going to end up being a problem. But as far as the finish goes, I painted him in black, and then a really dark blue, and then a really dark bluish like indigo purple, which is the final color you see here. He's just a tiny bit darker in real life than he is right now because these lights are kind of making the purple light up a little bit. But the purple was dry brushed on top of the blue, and well, the blue was dry brushed on top of the black, and then the purple was on top of that. And then of course I did the silver, just straight up painted the silver, straight up painted the red. I lined all of the red and silver with a fine bit of black. The red got a gloss coat for the armor. For the loincloth, it's just kind of like a satin. And then the skin got a very, very matte / flat coat to give him a nice skin look. And I think that worked out nicely. And then the gun is basically the same type of paint as the silver, but it is a darker color. The hair was airbrushed because painting white sucks. The eyes were painted by hand, of course. Everything was painted by hand except for the hair. And painting white. I did a very, very subtle bit of shading in the hair. You might be able to see it. I can't quite tell how the light's reacting with it. But for white hair, I always paint it with a nice gray, and then I airbrush the white on top so that it gets a little bit of shading going on, but not too much because I don't like it to look dirty. And then the wings were all just painted by hand and clear coated, of course. So that's about it. I don't think I need to go on too much more. I think most of you aren't going to care that much about the details except for the few who are already on Patreon and maybe the customer himself. But that's the long and short of it. There's my Thailog. Maybe my most taxing custom to date, not counting, well, maybe, I don't know, Samurai Deadpool with all the cloth and everything on him was kind of a tax. But this guy was a lot of work, and I'm happy it's done because not only do I have to not do it anymore, but it actually worked out. So I'm super pleased. You guys can let me know in the comment section below what you think about this. And also, if you were a fan of Gargoyles, let me know which one was your favorite. My favorite was always Goliath, of course, but I did also like Hudson. So Hudson was cool. So let me know who you guys liked if you watched Gargoyles. And we'll call it there. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I do have new videos up almost every single day. Sometimes every single day. Sometimes I can't simply get enough content out. But generally every single day. And if it's not out, I do have, tons and tons of videos, thousands of videos on the channel that you probably haven't seen most of. So you can always check those out if you're really hurting for a video about action figures. So you can always do that, and give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.